Okay, well, usual format. Names, pronouns, and the icebreaker, which for today I could go easy on you guys and say, what would you do on your last day? But let's do something kind of difficult. Do you believe in fate? And of course, I will go first. My name is Jonathan. My pronouns are he, him. I would say it's a tough question for me. I'm someone who's very superstitious. Um, but it's like, again, with the whole control thing, I don't like the idea that like my fate is kind of like, or my destiny is out of my control. Like I have no choice. Everything's determined for me. That kind of drives me nuts. But it is also kind of comforting to believe that like every decision I'll want to make has already been made, if that makes any sense. So I'll say yes. Um, I'm always the person when something good or bad happens, especially when bad happens. I'm always saying, well, it wasn't meant to be, or that was meant to happen. So yeah, I'll say yeah, even though it does kind of drive me a little bit crazy. What about you guys?
My name is Sierra and I go by she, her. I would say I definitely believe in fate. Like, I'm definitely a person that believes that everything happens for a reason. I feel like, I don't know if this is crazy, but I kind of feel like sometimes, like, I feel like we all have like a purpose or reason here on earth, right? And I kind of sometimes feel like, how, when people pass away sometimes, and it could be of some type of ailment or something like that. But I kind of feel like maybe they have, met their fate already. Maybe whatever they came here for, their purpose in life, they've met, and then now it's time for them to go to, a better place. So I would say I definitely do believe in faith. I don't know if that's so much like everything happens for a reason, but I would definitely say I agree.
I'm Val. I go by they, them, and it's always tough because it's like on one hand, you want to believe in free will and that you're able to make decisions for yourself. And it's like I always waffle back and forth, but then I do have feelings of things work out the way that they're supposed to in the end. Like even things like when I was 14 and I was in love with my spouse, and I was like, I think this is the greatest person in the world. And then, 14 years later, we started dating and ended up being getting married. So, like, things, it's like hard to not feel like that was some kind of fate in a way. So it's like, I don't know if I believe in like the traditional ideas of like free will and fate. Like, I feel like there might be a middle ground where there is room for wiggle room in decisions, but it is hard to not believe that like big things in your life aren't, at least to an extent, predetermined.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace. My pronouns are they, them, and I believe in a middle ground of fate. I believe that um, humans like to attach meaning to things, and that the things that we manifest, like in our minds, and that we go towards, I think those things are real. So, say that you know, are have really strong feelings about one thing or another. And then I think people make things happen for themselves or they don't and they acquiesce. And then I think, I don't know, like quantum physics or whatever, where certain things are attached, but, there might be multiverse theory. So like every decision that we make, I kind of like to think about it as a choose your own adventure book almost, where you do make decisions and then it does drastically alter things and you just don't know how it's going to alter things until you make it to the end, or you chose the wrong page and now you're at a weird spot in a choose your own adventure book. So that's how I feel about fate.
Nice, I like that. I gotta also say that, like, yeah, I kind of agree with you, Grace. I do think like there's probably other versions of myself out there somewhere that made the opposite decision of what I ended up making in this life. So, like, yeah, I do believe in the whole multiverse of it all. Okay, to get us started, I'll ask, what did everyone think of this month's book? They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera.
I would say Sierra here. I enjoyed the book, and the reason is it just made my mind just think about what if death were that simple. And the reason I say that is because right now, when things happen, I feel like the only thing that we do know is that we are going to die. That's one thing that we do know for sure. We don't know anything else, but we do know that we're going to die. And you would think that because we know this from birth, that everybody in the world will be just so much more prepared for it. Like, and it seems like not that everyone is, but most times death just comes, it comes fast, it comes sudden, it comes unexpected, it brings so much grief. And not to say that it would ease the pain or the hurt any better, but it's just a little bit more organized. You get to, like, I guess, meet your loved ones. Like, you don't have to see them, in such, I guess, like, a bad place if they're unhealthy or, just going through certain things. You get to say goodbye to them at least. So I think I enjoyed that book because I guess for me, it just made me look at things more so for being just a little bit more organized. Like, I mean, get on an app, put your information in, get all of your money out, like everything that you need just done within those couple hours. And then you get to spend those last, hours really doing what you want to do. The means are there. Um, I don't know. I guess this is if you don't live your life to the full, your full potential every day. But I did enjoy the book because I felt like if we had to plan death, I just feel like it's so organized and we would be a little bit more prepared. I felt like if we arranged death this way, I would say.
Yes, Sierra, I also um, agree a lot with what you said, and I really enjoyed the book, honestly, because it did make me think about, I don't know, life, and that every single person on Earth does know that you know, that they have a temporary time on this mortal coil, and a lot of people avoid that. And it made me think about, when I went up to this temple retreat, we actually meditated on death, which was, it sounds weird, but it was actually really a big relief. Because we kind of meditated on it and being like, yeah, we're all gonna go. We all have a time. And if every morning you wake up, you say, I may die today, then are you going to be as upset when people do, if someone cuts you off in traffic, or are you going to be kinder to people throughout the day if, you treat every day like it might be the day, because we don't know when our time is. So I really like the idea of getting your last day. But there was also a part of me that would love to not know, because that just seems like so much stress. And then the fact that they don't say, hey, you're going to die at like 5:51 p.m. and then it's just like any time throughout the day, I think would be super nerve-wracking. But I did like the book. I thought it was a like really quick, easy read, and I was grateful that they both did die at the end, and that we weren't going to somehow get bamboozled out of them having their last day. So I was worried about that a little bit throughout the book. I was like, ooh, are they going to get like rescued? Because I feel like that kind of, you know, there's meaning in life because of also death. So
Yeah, I would agree with you all. I did like the book. Um, I think I mentioned in Discord, there is something that's like oddly satisfying about a book's title giving away its ending. It filled me with like a sense of anxiety that like made me not want to put the book down. Yes, of course, I knew they were going to die, but I kept questioning how. And especially since the rules of how this death cast thing works has already explained to us that it's not exactly 24 hours. It could be 10 minutes after your phone call, 2 hours, et cetera, et cetera. So I kept wondering, like, at what point in the book are these characters going to die? Um, so yeah, I just like couldn't put it down. I think I finished this book in probably a day and a half, maybe 2 or 3 days, which is not uncommon for me, but with books we've read, I haven't done that in quite some time. So yeah, I like that. I liked the kind of like cozy, feel good energy the book has. I mean, it's sad, yes, but the author could have gone much further with it. We've read a few books in this club that have really talked about death, and they have been obviously more tragic. This book is surprisingly lighthearted, surprisingly kind of funny, kind of cutesy. Um, so I'll give the author props for that. I also like that the author didn't go into a lot of the more cliche routes. I know, Grace, you were just mentioning one about like the book's title not being like, not being exactly what's what I'm looking for. Ah, damn it. I'm blanking. Literal. The book's title is very literal. They do both die. There's no way out of their death. So I appreciated that. And yeah, I liked it. I mean, I guess also to clue you guys into how I spent my November after I read this book. I was inspired by the Last Friend app in the book to download the Bumble BFF app. I just kind of wanted to see like, what does this feel like? What does this look like? So that was kind of fun. Um, and yeah, I will also say this book is kind of an advertisement for Instagram, surprisingly enough. Like we mention Instagram like every other page. So kind of free promo for them. But yeah, I liked it. It was fun. I enjoyed myself. Um, okay. Usually we get into our characters, but before we do that, I am curious, do you guys think that Deathcast is helpful or harmful? And I guess a follow-up to that is, would you want a phone call from Deathcast?
Oh, oh God. Can't get in the way. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, I
Okay.
can hear.
If it were me, I would say give me a call. I mean, give me a call because I mean, maybe I'll be a little frazzled, maybe at the initial, I guess ringing of the phone call, but yeah, because at least I could just wrap it up. What if I was going to go to work today or, something like that? Let's say, it's your last day and nobody notified you. Like you just going to go and work, but you have to work to pay your bills. So ultimately, I would like the phone call just to let me figure out how I want to spend my last day if this is how I'm going to do it. So I think that I would definitely enjoy them calling me. I think that initially I would be probably definitely shocked, probably definitely panicked, but I would feel like I don't have enough time to do that. What if that's how I die? Because I didn't have a panic attack or a heart attack from them calling me. So I would definitely want the Deathcast phone call for sure.
That really, I kind of go back and forth about it because you're right, where it's like you don't want to just go to work and spend your last day just going to work. Or that one girl that they talked about in the one chapter where she thought it was a hoax. So she just like wasted her entire last day because she thought it was a joke. It wasn't real. But it's like I get so like panicked at the thought of knowing that I'm gonna die, where it's would I just waste the day because I was in a panic the entire time? Or would I use it like Mateo and actually go out and do all of these things that you didn't do in your life and actually like, oh my God, I was about to say go out with a bang and then realized how terrible that is in context of Mateo. But I still feel like I don't know. I still feel like I don't know for sure if I would want the phone call or not. I thought about it the entire book and I still like finished the book. Now we're in this discussion, and I still don't know for sure if I would want a phone call or not.
Yeah, that's it. It's tough because I feel like I would want a phone call so I would know how I wanted to spend my day, but then my day would be filled with such like anxiety that you'd have to. I don't know, talk your way down from anxiety and then do the things that you want to do within the time frame that you have, because again, you don't know if it's going to be like 10 minutes after your phone call or not. And I think that is what would give me the most anxiety as I was like trying to prepare stuff and be like, what if I open my computer and then I shock myself and then, so I could have just not known and had a good day. But then, like seriously, but what if I go to work? And so I don't want to go to work on my last day. Uh, so it's really tough. And I guess if I lived in this society, it would be more normalized that maybe you'd have a little bit more recourse knowing you could get a phone call. But it just sounds awful. Just getting a phone call at midnight. Like every time midnight hits, everyone's looking at their phone and then they just kind of like breathe a sigh of relief at 1 a.m. or something. I don't know. Uh, yeah, it's really tough. I would say, you know, yuck. I think it's just all around yuck. I don't think humans were meant to know, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to answer the first question, is Deathcast more helpful or harmful? I think you guys' answers are a testament to it's not that helpful. I mean, this would fill a lot of people with anxiety. And I guess my question is there anxiety? Is telling people that they're going to die that day, does that cause their death? Like, would they die had they not known? Would they perhaps live life regularly and like not get in some kind of accident or, whatever? Um, that's kind of what plagues me is like, is this really helping anyone? Also, my other thing is I could see deathcasts being helpful if the government or whoever controls this system is using it to kind of like stop natural events. Like I would imagine, let's say, for example, at a deathcast call center, there's a list of a bunch of people, let's say 100 people who are going to die around, on the same day. They live in about the same city. Wouldn't you think perhaps there's some kind of big natural disaster, plane crash, buildings catching on fire, and like maybe have some kind of way to keep people safe to prevent those things from happening? And obviously, our knowledge of Deathcast so far in this novel is not that expansive, but I don't think we have any evidence of Deathcast doing that, trying to prevent these kinds of things. Um, I would also think like just sensibly, wouldn't you try to like help individuals prevent their death? Like perhaps put them in some kind of safe room, like a padded cell with a straitjacket on, which I know obviously sounds horrible, but if that could prevent you from dying, I think people would probably take that opportunity. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's all that helpful simply because I don't really see what they're doing to help people with this information. Now, in regards to me wanting a phone call, I gotta be honest, yes. I definitely want a phone call. Um, I've always been the kind of person to where like death doesn't really bother me. I mean, I work in the emergency room. I'm around death pretty much every day of my work life, to some capacity. So it doesn't bother me. What does bother me as a more in control person, and I will admit I am a type A personality through and through, what does bother me is not being prepared for something. So if I could get a phone call saying, hey, you're going to die perhaps within the next 24 hours, I would. I'm not really concerned with doing certain things, having certain experiences, but I have a lot of errands I have to run on my death day. Like a big one for me and kind of a big anxiety trigger for me is like thinking if I were to die out and about, I'm not at home, who's going to feed my cat? Like that really scares me, the idea of him being here all by himself, just like crying out for food. So I would definitely need someone to take my cat, obviously keep him permanently, but of course feed him. Um, who's going to tell my job, right? Who's going to tell my landlord that I'm not going to pay rent anymore? And of course, who's going to take over for the book club? I would hate like you guys waiting for the end of the month for me to show up and I just like don't show up anymore, right? So I need to tell people. And that's the only thing that really bothers me about death is like not being prepared for it. So And I'm also the kind of person in my family, I know my grandmother and my father hate this, but like I'm always asking about like, do you have your will prepared? Do you have like your end of life plans prepared? You know, it freaks them out, but like I'm the kind of person like I need to know what you want because you might die suddenly or you may become incapacitated to where you can't communicate with me anymore what you want. And I don't want to be left with the stress of figuring it out myself. So yeah, yeah. Yes, I want a phone call for sure. Okay, now getting into our characters, let's start with who we meet first, Mateo. General thoughts on Mateo as a character in this story.
I was never to like the extent that he kind of locked himself away from the world, but I've had periods of time where I have kind of just physically removed myself from a lot of things and not done a lot of things that I should have done when I was younger and things like that. And I even still have moments of staying at home times when I probably shouldn't be staying at home. So I related to him on that level, which is why, talking about the phone call where, he kind of turned it around for himself. And that makes me wonder that as much as getting the phone call is scary, would that also kind of get me off my ass to do things that I've always meant to do? And if because of my anxiety or something or other, have just stopped myself from doing. So I did see not a ton of myself, but in that aspect, I did kind of see myself kind of connecting to him in that aspect, more so than some of the other characters. But he also, in some ways, sometimes, and I don't know if it's because I don't want to say it's because of like bad writing or because it's YA. Like I also kind of felt that in some ways a lot of the characters, not that they were flat, but they kind of felt like tropey at times too. So it kind of it felt like it kept me from like fully investing and fully seeing myself in a lot of the characters. Like I did really like the book, but it just kind of felt like there was a lot of surface level happening, which kind of kept me from really diving in the way that I would have wanted to.
I think I liked Mateo. He was very sweet. I felt like I wished he would have not spend so much time maybe in the house, but then I kind of understood, like, I guess why he wanted to be in the house. But I felt like when I found out he was 18, I was just like, man, he doesn't want to go outside and experience life a little bit more. Um, but I also thought that he was just very sweet, very kind-hearted, but I was a little bit sad that he was leaving behind. I believe it was his goddaughter. So I was a little bit sad about that, but he was a very sweet, kind guy, I would say.
Yeah, when we got introduced to Mateo, he reminded me a lot of some of the friends that I had growing up, where I just called them like sweet angel babies, where they're just too sweet for their own good, and then they're just kind of scared of everything. Um, and oop, let's see, hold on. Let's see. Let's see. Is that better? Okay. Um, yeah, so I think I like I like Mateo because I feel like we have met a lot of Mateos in our life. And I would agree that I would have loved to have seen some of the characters, especially Mateo, more like fleshed out about like maybe why he was so scared. I mean, we got some sort of idea where his dad, had an accident, or I think maybe his sexuality came into play because he wasn't out per se or was still thinking about it. And so I just thought he was just
a little cutie and that, yeah, 18. So he's like old enough to start doing things and living life, but I could still see where sometimes you're kind of stuck in that limbo phase of being young, but then also being old enough to start doing stuff on your own. So I liked Mateo. I just wish Mateo would have just even when he knew he was gonna die, just come out of his shell a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I liked Mateo for the most part. He did seem like a really sweet kid. And I relate obviously to the anxiety aspect. I mean, I still am very introverted and I am more of an inside person. I haven't really taken much risk, but I like my life that way. So I don't really live in regret. But yeah, I relate to a lot of that. However, if it wasn't obvious from what I shared in Discord, Mateo is a Mary Sue character. Um, this character who is seemingly perfect in every single way. He has no faults. His only perhaps character flaw is that he's shy. That's really, with all due respect to Adam Silvera, as a writer, that is incredibly lazy. Um, to give a character that kind of personality. I remember in college, I took a creative writing course. And of course, this is just basic. I'm not a writer by any means. I'm not coming for Adam Silvera's job or anything like that. But I remember my professor telling us that when you write any kind of character, especially a protagonist, you should give them 3 good traits and then 2 negative traits. That makes characters feel realistic. That makes characters feel fully fleshed out. And with that, there's a lot of room to play. When you make characters 100% perfect, it's unrealistic because no one is like that. No one's this sweet little angel just dropped from heaven, Bambi in the woods. Like that doesn't exist. Sorry. And obviously, with antagonists, you flip it 3 negative traits, 2 positive traits because no one's 100% bad either. But yeah, I don't know if that was a self insert of how Adam Silvera sees himself. Respectfully, I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but you're also not perfect, right? So I would have liked, like you all said, a little bit more variety in who Mateo is as a person. I mean, we literally have your Mary Poppins. I'm sure you are. All the animals you have, I'm sure you are. but um, but yeah, we even see Mateo. He quite literally gives a random stranger the shoes off of his feet. Really, come on, man. But I don't want to be a pessimist. He's a nice kid. Unfortunately, he's dead. Okay, now Rufus. General thoughts on Rufus as a character in this story.
Now, what I would say about Rufus is why did he beat up his ex, I think his ex-girlfriend's boyfriend, and then turn around and fall in love with Mateo? I was just so, a little bit like, I can't believe this one here. You done been fighting on this girl's boyfriend, and now you in love with this man. So you done wrecked her life a little bit. And then now you gonna go and what? Be happy. But I'm just joking. But I wish I could have, I guess, learned a little bit more about his family history, like, exactly like what happened. Um, and just a little bit more about him. Why was he so, rough? Like, why was he, why did he want to fight the ex-boyfriend? I mean, of course I get it, but I would just have, I would have liked to learn a little bit more about him. Um, and I thought that it was nice that he went to go and see Mateo's father at the end of the book. I thought that was nice on his end day.
I agree with you where it was, it's like we first meet him and he's just beating up this guy that he doesn't even really know anything about, except that he's dating his ex, and he turns out to be a horrible person apparently. But and then yeah, and then he turns around and falls in love, which feels like the most teenage, the most teenage behavior ever. Um, but also it's like there is that. And then he falls in love and he goes and he visits Mateo's dad and everything, but it never really feels like full growth to me in a way, I guess. Which I guess goes back to feeling like there is so much just like surface level and like trope, which is easy for me to call. I don't read a lot of YA, so I just kind of when I do read it, I just kind of take that as a grain of salt because in a lot of ways, in a lot of YA books, I just feel like that's kind of par for the course. Not to say that all YA books are like that, but yeah, I felt like it was just kind of strange behavior where it is like there's these huge jumps in personality, but it's like, is it real growth or is it just behavioral changes because he knows that he's on his way out, so he's trying to do better and be better at the end? And I don't know, I just kind of felt myself kind of like waffling with his character a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know how many people have watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but it did make me feel like the author was trying to make like a Spike from Buffy character, like, oh, a bad boy that's so mean. Ooh, but this bad boy wants to kiss this other boy now. And so now they're being all sweet and trying to like be good because Mateo is so good that he's like, oh, in order to get with this good boy, I got to be a good boy and not a bad boy. That's kind of how it felt. And yeah, and I kind of felt like that's what they were going for, but it's really hard to have that kind of an arc in one day. And I think that is kind of the struggle here, right? Is because you're trying to make characters completely maybe change personalities in one day and then doing the best you can because then there's like fate involved. And then people really do, I think, when they get confronted with death, actually do make huge changes in their life. And sometimes knowing that you're going to die does kind of shake you out of some of these things that you're doing. And I think in the beginning of the book, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe he was beating up on this kid because A, he didn't like him, but it was also kind of like he kind of felt like he was breaking up his little family because it sounded like they were friends and this like group of really close group of friends for a long time. And so because, she was leaving, I think, to go to college and now has like a new boyfriend. I'm just wondering if he was more upset about breaking up the family than it was about maybe them dating. Yeah. So, and then, jealousy comes out in weird ways with for people like just because I don't want to date someone anymore doesn't mean you get to. And we've all had, friends or people that have done that to us. We were like, what are you talking about? Why are you acting this way? So I feel like I liked him more as a character, but only because I think he had more flaws. And that's why I liked reading about him because of all the mess he made for himself on his death day and like trying to run from the cops and being on a bike and then trying to explain himself to Mateo and things like that. So probably that writing class definitely had a point where the flaws kind of made it more of a fledged out person. So I did end up liking Reveal, I feel like more.
Yeah, I agree. I Out of the two, I preferred Rufus, solely because he is a character whose growth we can see throughout the story. And Mateo, I don't really think he makes that vast of a change because again, there's nothing wrong with him. I was a little bit confused though at how Rufus saw himself. He saw himself as this like big, bad, mean guy. I didn't really get that perception of him. I mean, yes, of course, he was obviously beating up the kid, but it's like, yeah, he talks shit about you. Yeah, beat his ass. Why not? I kind of get it. but but yeah, so it wasn't like, I don't know, he wasn't like some bully who was like robbing people on the street and like taking old ladies' purses. Like, you're not really a bad boy. I think Peck is more the bad boy because he's in a gang. I mean, like, I don't know, whatever. So yeah, I like Rufus more. Like I said on Discord, of course, I do not like the name Rufus. I'm so curious why Adam Silvera chose that name because that name is not even that common. um, at least in my experience. So I don't know. But yeah, I like Rufus, sweet kid. Um, yeah, all Mateo does leave the house. Exactly. Right. Um, and I guess while we're talking about things that they've done, I really appreciated the scene where Rufus got back in the water with all of the water trauma. Um, yeah. So again, you have a character who does so much growth, and then a character who doesn't really do any outside of, I guess I'll give him points for singing on stage later in the story, which of course we'll get to later on. But yeah, I mean, he's the only one that really felt fleshed out, felt like the author really gave a shit about making this character interesting, unfortunately. Okay, now before we move on, I want to touch on something I've seen a lot online, a lot of complaint of. A lot of people really hated the random POV side character chapters. I'm curious, were you guys bothered by that? Did you guys think that distracted from the story, or did these random POVs make sense to you and seem like intentional?
I kind of liked them. In a way, it reminded me of um the first third of The Stand by Stephen King, where the apocalypse was happening and it had all of the main characters, but then there were just these interspersed chapters just showing like what was happening to random people at the same time. And I always thought that was so fascinating, and that was one of the most fascinating parts of the book for me. And I kind of liked how we're finding out how this system works, with the death cast with these two people. But I kind of liked seeing what was happening at the same time to just like seemingly random people. I actually I can see how that would take people out of the story and they wouldn't like it, but I really liked it and I was interested in seeing what other people were going through at the same time. So I personally like those chapters.
I would say I enjoyed those chapters too. I do wish, being as though those chapters were inserted, I wish those chapters could have been like maybe what was going on in like the deaf cast like office building, or like what really goes on, like how is it really done? Maybe, how do they select the people? Like a little bit more backstory, maybe on the inside of Death Cast. But the chapters, they were cool, I would say. But I would have liked to see maybe a little bit more back scene of what was going on the inside.
Yeah, I liked them. I didn't think they took me out of the story too much, especially since they all kind of had a reason. So, I guess, I took it as Rufus got ran over by that guy that was the boyfriend of the woman that was going to die because he was going too fast, because why not? And then, I feel like it did tell you things and then it like amalgamated itself into the story. So I didn't think it was just kind of like there to be there. But I like those kinds of things because I kind of like being was it like the omniscient observer, where you get to see everything and everybody and then be able to put the pieces together yourself, while these characters are just kind of in their standalone stories. So I could see where folks might not like it, but I always like those things. I always think they're cool if done well.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't bothered by them at all. I mean, like you all said, I can understand perhaps in some ways why certain people didn't like them, but to me, none of the random POVs, I probably shouldn't say that, none of the POVs felt random to me. It's the kind of like this big butterfly effect kind of thing. Everyone's perspective that you get does play a part in our story in some way. Some characters, of course, more than others, but they're all somewhat important to our main story. Um, I will say, however, the one thing that perhaps I don't like about them is it felt like oftentimes with our two main characters, Mateo and Rufus, when we're getting to the very deep, emotional, well written parts of the story, we're then bombarded with like a random character. And that kind of took me out of the moment sometimes. But again, no one really felt random. Everyone's perspective made sense to me. Um, and also, I guess to briefly touch on this, I really liked the perspective of the actor slash writer. I believe his name is Howie Maldonado, which, funnily enough, I don't know how many people watch Harry Potter, but a lot of people were saying is meant to be Tom Felton. I don't know if that's shade or not, but hey, if that's true, then that's true. Um, but I like that because I like the fact that we're seeing how this death casting even affects celebrities. I would think it'd be kind of like a lot of people's first mind as people who are incredibly rich, powerful, privileged, well known. They may have some kind of way to kind of like circumvent this death cast thing, but with the inclusion of his chapter, it felt like in death, we're all equal. No matter how famous you are, rich you are, whatever, we're all going to die, and there's really nothing no one can do. So I appreciated that. Um, and yeah, I liked seeing how like that is like this, just like this domino effect thing. I really like that. So I don't know. I don't get how people didn't like it, but whatever. Everyone has an opinion. Um, Now, Sierra, you touched on something that other people have also complained about. Were you guys bothered by how little information we get on how Deathcast operates, or did that also seem intentional to you guys?
I would say I was definitely bothered by it because first off, some of the people were rude. I believe like the first lady, I would have to get my book to figure out what her name was. But the first representative that called Mateo, I think that she called him somebody else's name. I think she called him Timothy or somebody. And I'm like, can you imagine somebody calling you, telling you're about to die, and then you're gonna call me somebody else's name? Like, of course, I would think that you were calling the wrong person, but then you didn't apologize. You just, fixed it and kept on going. So I would definitely have loved to see a little bit more about DeathCast. Like, what is the training policy? How do these guys come up on the list? How confidential is this? This list. Do you guys get any special treatments because you work up in here? Like, what is the benefits of you working here? This is one of the things I know that when people say robots take over our job, and that could be a little bit, I guess, messed up too to have a robot call you, but maybe like put a nice voice on her. But maybe have like robots call and give you this effective information, like with some empathy or sympathy. Well, you can't say sympathy because they haven't died, but a little bit of empathy. Um, because I just felt like it was just no good information about that Death Cast, how it goes on, how these people are selected. Do they help the employees if they have any type of mental breakdowns from calling people to give them this information? Because I do remember one part in the book, it was like, I think by the time you leave at the end of the day, like everybody you have called will be dead or something like that by tomorrow. Not the exact words, but just imagine everybody that you spoke to that day and called. Let's say you called 100 people. Everybody tomorrow are going to be dead. So I feel like, what is the procedures for this particular job? Like, how are they maintaining the health of their employees? Just different things like that.
Yeah, I wanted to know more about how the system works. I tend to be that way in a lot of like books and movies and everything else, where it's like I want to know information like behind the system. Like, how did it start? Like, it's just so fascinating where it's like, who created this? Why was it created? How did they know? Like, how do they get the information? It's like I did, especially in the beginning, I just kept thinking about that with these phone calls. And especially when she was calling would have somebody else's name. I'm just like, how does HR work within the death business? And yeah, I feel like there were a lot of questions, and I'm okay with like things not being answered and some things being ambiguous, but with this, I really did want even just a little bit of baseline information. I feel like I would have gotten more out of it.
Yeah, I was really curious and I, it's like you're always meeting people on like their worst day for like people on Deathcast that call. And, they're like Sierra's point, like, okay, maybe you call 100 people in a day and you know that the next day they're going to die. So like when you work for Deathcast, can you like only do, I don't know, like 1,000 phone calls before they make you like switch out and do something else for your mental health? Or like, do they have a system like that? Would be just very interesting, because at least, my friends that do work in the medical field, you do have success stories every once in a while, and it's not like constantly every single person that you talk to is going to die. And so I just feel like the way you get through that is probably being, I guess, an ass sometimes, or just trying not to care, which is the worst thing you can do, because you're, so yeah, Andrea definitely needs a different job. But yeah, I would have loved to have understood that system a little bit more. And it kind of makes me think that the author did not understand the system either, and was just kind of like, this is a system just to kind of get the story out, and was probably going to figure out the system later, is kind of the vibes I got from the book.
I see, Sierra, you had a hand raised. Did you want to speak again?
No, I'm sorry. I made a mistake.
Oh, no worries. um, this is tricky for me. I'm not sure if I would say I was bothered by how little information. I think, to Grace's point, sure, it's very possible that when the author was writing this book, he didn't really know how it worked either. It just kind of just like, he just kind of made it work for the story. But I think in some sense, the little information we do get does help put us in the perspective of our main characters, because they also don't know how these things work. So we're feeling a sense of like dread, confusion, frustration as they are. And I think that kind of works for this story, interestingly enough. Whether it's poor planning or whatever, it kind of works out for me. But I will say, I am curious how big this Deathcast operation works. I mean, I'm thinking, is this worldwide? Is this just in the US? I doubt it's just a New York thing. That didn't come across to me in the story, but I'm just kind of wondering. I mean, there are what, 7 or 8 billion people in the world, and that grows every like what, 30 seconds or so, someone is born or dies. So like, how do they possibly have enough heralds, they call them, to call each person who's going to die? I mean, there's probably what, maybe 5,000 deaths per day worldwide. I mean, you have to have how many representatives to call people every single day? It just doesn't really make sense. I would think with such a widespread operation, like Sierra was saying, a robot calling or like automatic text being sent out or whatever would make a lot more sense. That would be a lot faster and probably more accurate, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't want to know that. That's what I did want to know. And yeah, like Grace was saying, and like Sierra, you were also mentioning, how does this really affect the heralds? I mean, we know we have the chapters of, I believe his name is Victor. He's like the more stressed out one. He really cannot cope with the responsibilities of his job as a herald. But like, what is really offered to him to kind of help him out? That's another question that you guys raised that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I will say, I do remember when I was probably 20, my sophomore year of college, I got a job working at a suicide hotline. And I remember the training process was pretty simple, standard phone call procedures. But the one thing they pressed every single training session was, do not get attached to the end result, because you will not last if you become attached to each person that calls. Because the reality is, unfortunately, a lot of people may proceed with their plan after you hang up the phone with them, and you can't let that bother you. So I'm just curious, like someone like Andrea, yeah, she seems like a total asshole, right? Like she's getting the names wrong, she's kind of insensitive, but that's kind of the only way you can do that job effectively, right? And we can obviously have a whole discussion on the medical care system and like all of that and how it kind of dehumanizes people and everything, but we don't have time for that conversation. So, but yeah, That was a really good point, Grace. Um, okay, now I want to know, what did you guys think of the relationship between Mateo and Rufus?
I would say their relationship moved pretty fast. I mean, man, they were in love in less than 24 hours. You know, it's a saying that they say lesbians move fast, but they move pretty fast. I would say it was a very young love story, and they were cute. It's the most I can say. I'm glad that they found one another to at least be able to comfortably spend each other's last day together, because sometimes it doesn't really matter the time frame that you miss a person. You know, you meet a person or know a person. So that was, you know, a blessing that they were able to meet each other and enjoy enjoy each other's company like their last day. But it was really fast, I tell you that.
When you're young and you're gonna die, you just gotta kiss people. So I think that, I mean, I wasn't surprised at all by the outcome of them wanting to smoochies, and also doing it kind of fast, just because you're gonna die today. So you might as well fall in love and have smoochie time, because there's also no consequences for falling in love and having smoochie time if all you have is one day. So I feel like sometimes not having to worry about repercussions can also open us up to having deeper, more meaningful relationships quicker, because they were able to talk about their fears, their feelings, and not have to really worry about the consequences. And that's kind of how I felt when I was reading the book, about how much of our lives are anxiety over sharing ourselves with somebody. But then when we actually do open up, sometimes we get what we want, or sometimes we get the opportunity to then walk away sooner so we can then find something that we want. So I just kind of thought that the reason why for all of that made a lot of sense to me. Um, and I thought it was standard, I don't know, standard teenager stuff, 17, 18. I mean, I've also had friends that will be like, I'm in love. And I was like, cool. When did you meet? They're like, I don't know, like a week ago. I'm like, excuse me? So that doesn't happen as much anymore, but it definitely has happened when I was a teenager for sure. So I thought it was a predictable love story, I guess, too.
Yeah, it was predictable, but I feel like it was one of those things where I also thought about where it was, if it wasn't the moment, not that they wouldn't have fallen in love, but I doubt that the relationship would have progressed the way that it did if they weren't dying. Or, not dying, but knowing that they weren't going to make it out of the day. Where I think because they did meet and they did have a connection, that's not to say that they wouldn't have had some kind of relationship if they had met under different circumstances. But and it was a little hokey, a little cutesy, but also it's like, I don't know. I just felt for what the book was. I liked that.
Okay, I'm a little torn here because I did really enjoy the friendship that Mateo and Rufus shared. I thought it was interesting, it was very sweet and heartwarming. I also kind of liked how we know both of them have lost their parents in one way or another. Obviously, Mateo's father is not dead, but he's in a coma, so he can't really connect with him at this time. But they kind of parent each other. I really liked that. They help one another grow, and kind of like fulfill their destiny, I guess, in a weird way. Um, I liked that, but maybe this is like the aromantic side of me coming out. I don't think we needed a love story with them. I would have preferred if they were just friends. Um, I don't know. When we get the romantic element between them, it feels kind of cheap, kind of rushed. I mean, Mateo wanting his first kiss, that's understandable. You're gonna die. I mean, I'm not gonna die with unkissed lips, but I don't know, saying I love you, it kind of cheapens it to me for some reason. Um, so yeah, I would have preferred if they were just friends, but maybe that's just a little aromantic in me coming out. But because Val, you brought up a very interesting point, I am curious with you two, Grace and Sierra. Do you think that Rufus and Mateo would have fallen in love if they were not dying, or would they not even be in a relationship at all?
Absolutely not, because he was beating up the ex-girlfriend's boyfriend. I feel like he would have still been maybe chasing her and messing up their life. I don't think that they probably would have been dating. I don't even know how they would have been friends because they met on that app. So absolutely not. They wouldn't have had a relationship, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think they would have had a relationship. I don't even know. I mean, again, they met on the app, so nothing would have happened. But I don't know. Their story kind of felt like if they would have met in adulthood a little bit more, like maybe in their 20s, I could see them like being friends and maybe falling in love and talking about how like I don't know, like how different they were as like teenagers or something like that. But if I feel like if they weren't going to die and had to be like rushed into a friendship, then wanting to have a first kiss and things like that, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's kind of sad to say, but I think the only thing that really bonds them is them both knowing they're going to die. I mean, of course, like you guys have pointed out, they wouldn't have been met without the app because they were both going to die. But I'm like, they could possibly have met some other kind of way, riding the train or whatever. Um, but in love, no. There's a point in the book where I believe Mateo says, had we met and we were not dying, you wouldn't have liked me because you wouldn't have had the patience to wait for me to take action. And Mateo says, you wouldn't have liked me either because I was really mean and too violent, and that would have scared you off. Um, so yeah, I think they wouldn't have made the changes to themselves as characters that made one another like each other without knowing they were going to die. So it's kind of sad, but no, I don't think they would work. um, okay, now I'm going to circle back to our first conversation about fate. What did you guys think of Rufus and Mateo's conversation about fate? And follow up, do you think their deaths were avoidable or were their deaths fate?
Okay, I'll go. I I can't remember how Rufus passed. Please forgive me. But Mateo, I remember how he passed. I believe it was in the apartment in a fire. Um, I don't I mean, was that fate? I don't know. I don't want to say that was fate, but could it have been prevented? I don't know. I feel like once a fire gets started, it's just what it is. So I feel like that was more, I guess, realistic if somebody, house caught on fire, but I can't remember how Rufus died. But from Mateo, fate to say that he was burnt in the fire, I don't know, but because it makes me retract what I said prior. So that's tough. I'm gonna just leave it there. Oh, he was hit by a car. Well, Jesus. They are both tragic deaths. I'm gonna just say that. They are bad deaths. Like I would not say that is fate. Jeez. Um, could they have been preventable to get hit by a car? If you can dodge traffic, maybe, but I think that they just went that it was the way that they were supposed to go, and I'm gonna just leave it there.
Yeah, Jonathan, the thing that you said before was like without death cast, would these deaths even be happening? The minute that Mateo died, I thought about the fact that he left a note for the neighbor that said not to worry about fixing the stove that killed him anymore because he was going to die that day. And so, what if the neighbor actually was just going to continue to do the neighborly thing and fix that stove? Um, and then Rufus getting run over by the car. If Deathcast didn't tell that woman that for some reason I cannot remember her name, was gonna die, then that guy wouldn't have been speeding to like go help her or whatever, you know. So I was kind of Delilah, thank you. So yeah, I was just kind of thinking about, is Deathcast technically causing these fates to happen because they're warning people that they're gonna die, so then they do things that they normally wouldn't have done that day, and that's why Deathcast works so well because they're technically like pulling the strings. Yeah. So it kind of made me think about a lot of things, like when you're driving and someone stops you to talk to you for a second, you're like, I really gotta go, and then that helps you like avoid a car accident, maybe, or different things like that. So yeah, I was kind of thinking about how all those fates kind of intertwined, and it kind of all led back to like Death Cast.
Yeah, the whole fate thing, you're thinking about that, but then they both died in very avoidable ways. So I was thinking the same thing, where it's like, if Mateo just remembered that he had left a note saying, it's like, or if he had just been like, not going to use this stove, and then, at the end with Rufus, it said, he stepped out into the road with no one to hold their arm out. So he just wasn't looking. If he had just looked up, he was distracted by the video of Mateo singing. So it's like if he had looked up or if he had actually like looked both ways before crossing the street, that probably wouldn't have happened either. So I see your point where it's like, did those happen because it was fate and that's what's just what was supposed to happen? Or did it happen because they were distracted with other things happening and with thinking about how they were going to die? I just thought it was really interesting about how they did die and what most people would probably see as very, avoidable ways of dying.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Again, I'm torn. Um, Earlier we talked about fate, and it's like I kind of can't double back now. I mean, I've already said I believe in fate to some extent, so I guess they're fate. I mean, I don't like to believe that your fate is like a very violent or like painful death, like an explosion or a car crash or getting hit by a car. But I guess it is. I mean, if we're talking about avoidable, I guess I'm gonna do a little like investigating here. Yes, perhaps the stove would have been fixed had Mateo not left the note with the neighbor. But because Mateo was out of the house, and I don't believe we're ever told that neighbor had a key to this apartment, he wouldn't have fixed anyway because he couldn't have got in. Now, had Mateo been home, of course, that possibly could have happened. Also, there was no promise the stove was going to get fixed that day. It was just, it's going to get fixed, but could be today, tomorrow, next week, whatever. Um, but it's also like, would Mateo have wanted to make tea had they not taken a nap? You know, because he felt so emboldened to use the stove because they took a nap and he thought he had survived the night, and kind of didn't want to believe in death casts anymore, right? So that caused his death. Now with Rufus, yes, sure, he could have looked both ways. He could have not been on his phone, but just like knowing the kind of person he is, he doesn't tend to look both ways. So, is that fate? Is that his fault? I don't know. um, I don't know. I'm just not really. I'm not convinced it's not fate. But Grace, you did bring up a very interesting point. Now I'm getting a little conspiratorial, and I apologize. I'm gonna put you guys on it for a second, but I wonder if deathcast is like population control. Like, for example, they don't know who's gonna die. They just like pick random names out of the generator and call people. And then because of that anxiety, that make every second count kind of thing each person has instilled in them with the deathcast phone call, their decisions that day lead to their death. Um, I don't know. Because thinking of like Howie Maldonado, for example, the celebrity who died in the car crash, had Rufus and Mateo not been running to cross the street, the car crash wouldn't have happened and he wouldn't have died. But Rufus and Mateo were running because they wanted to live each second to the last, right? Eh. And we also know Deathcast cannot predict suicide. Eh. I don't know. I think I'm landing on population control now. Like they kind of want people to die to some extent. Also looking at how big of an industry death becomes now because of Deathcast, how much like how profitable death becomes now. It would kind of make sense that like to raise profits in this like what do they call it? The World Expo or whatever, the travel center, the Make a Moment Center, all of that. The only reason they get any kind of money is because people think they're going to die. So I don't know. Could be a kind of government conspiracy thing going on there, but whatever. Um, okay. What did you guys think of the growth, if any, that Rufus and Mateo showed throughout the story?
As far as growth, I guess if I would say growth, I would think that Rufus had maybe a little growth, like he wasn't actually being physical and beating someone up. As far as Mateo, I felt like maybe he stayed the same a little. I feel like he was just very nice, very loving. Um, so I would say if it was some growth, I would say Rufus the most, I guess, because he, started off punching somebody in the face to it, going to see somebody's dad to tell them, how much their son cared for them. So I would feel like he had the growth if I felt like I would have to say someone had it.
Yeah, I would say that Val kind of was like Mateo left the house. That was that was his growth, and then Rufus definitely had more growth, but I'm also wondering if it's like what we kind of talked about before, where it's only because you have one day left to live, so wanted to kind of be nicer for the day, right? So how much growth? I think that's like a good question too. Is like how much growth can a person have in one day? And like what does that actually look like um with trying to like be a better person? Like when does that tipping point actually happen when you keep trying every day? Because you don't really have any obstacles for your day then to kind of test you per se if you just have to be nice for one day. So I would say Rufus had more growth, but what kind of growth was it really? Not sure.
Yeah, it's like I still feel kind of like what I said earlier, where it's like with Rufus, I feel like he did have more growth, but then it's also like how much of it was actual growth and how much of it was just, behavior and acting on what was happening with everything else going on and with the looming thought of death. But yeah, it's like Mateo didn't really have a lot of growth and didn't really, which I mean also makes sense for like Mary Sue characters too. It's like how can you have growth and change when you're quote unquote perfect to begin with, and it did make his character like kind of almost annoying at times. But yeah, it's kind of hard for a character like that to have growth when that's, you know, they're supposed to be their full self to begin with. But yeah, I kind of wonder. It's like even though Rufus had some good moments and had some changes, it's kind of hard to decide since it's just a day. Like, is it true growth and change or not?
You all make some really interesting points that I hadn't really thought of. Um, I guess first I'll say perhaps I was a little too harsh on Rufus. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, you know what? He left his apartment. He learned how to communicate better with people and speak his mind and take action. Of course, I mean he does literally stop the shooting in the club with Peck and Rufus. Um, but more importantly, he does come out to his father and to Lydia, his best friend. So uh, I'll give him a little bit of grace. He grew just a bit more than I thought of. Um, and with Rufus, yeah, of course, like I said earlier, I think he does have the most growth. I think he has the most room to grow because we know he has certain character flaws. He becomes more patient. I mean, he quite literally lets Mateo spend most of their day doing Mateo's business, things that don't even really include him. Going to Lydia's house, going to see his father, et cetera, burying the bird, all of that. Um, which is ironic because he dies because he cannot be patient. His impatience is what kills him. But uh, there's that. Uh, I guess you could say Rufus becomes nicer, but I don't think he was really mean before. I guess he becomes more generous. I mean, it's because of him witnessing how generous Mateo is with his money, with everyone around him, the waitress, the homeless man, his best friend, that Rufus feels encouraged to give up his bike, which I don't believe he would have done without meeting Mateo because he loved that bike so much. Um, and yeah, oh, and of course, I totally forgot. Mateo finally has the courage to sing in front of people. He goes up on the stage and sings karaoke, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, yeah. They both kind of grew. I'll give them that. Okay, now on to the ending. What did you guys think of the book's ending?
I would say the ending of the book kind of made me want to get the second book because I just wanted to find out just a little bit more about Death Cast. Like, if I'm being completely honest, I wanted to know just a little bit more details. Was kind of made me wanted to, look into the second book. As far as, like I said, I couldn't remember how Rufus had died. You said he had got hit by a car, but. I don't know. I guess because it was about death and we knew they were going to die, maybe I wanted something a little bit more, I don't know, not you being burnt in a fire. So maybe if we knew they were going to die, but why was it nothing like, I don't know, I can't think of anything like crazy enough, but it was okay. I'll just say that. It was okay. It makes me want to get the second book to see maybe is it going to tell me a little bit more, I would say, I guess.
I mean, I feel like the ending with Rufus, like the last line of the book, was it kind of emotionally manipulative and like sad? Like not like over the top, but just almost like this quiet way of going out. And I was like, did it work? Did I tear up at my desk at work? Yes. So I guess it got its point in the end, but I kind of liked that. I mean, a fire and, your oven going out, like that's not a casual way to die, but I kind of appreciated because part of it is I was like, is it going to be some kind of really weird, like Final Destination style stuff? Like I was kind of nervous that's where it was going, and I kind of liked that it didn't go that way.
Yeah, I was trying to think about different ways it could have ended. I honestly thought one of them was going to get shot because of the actions of Rufus, which would have kind of made more sense to me that, that bully boyfriend, like his actions caused the death of Mateo, maybe, that would have, felt more, mm, yeah, but just a fiery ball of flames for your oven. I was just like, dang, that's crazy. That's pretty intense. And so I thought it was interesting that the author chose that intense of a death, and it did kind of feel like Final Fantasy with Final Fantasy, Final Destination with the like the car crash of the famous guy, and then the fiery ball of flames in the oven, and then you just get run over by a car. I was like, oh, interesting. So, no logs coming off of a truck or anything like that. So, but overall, I really liked it, and I thought it ended the way that yeah, that it could have, yeah. And the gym explosion, I do feel like this the author may have watched Final Destination and went, I have a really good YA book in mind for this, um and just because the death seemed ridiculous, like, I don't know, there's a lot of tragic deaths out there that are someone trips and falls and like bumps their head and then they die. Like, that happens a lot. And yeah, I was just it, the catastrophic deaths I thought were very interesting. But yeah, but I liked it. So
Yeah, the ending. mm, I'm not sure if I'm gonna say I liked it. I mean, there are parts I did like. I thought the club scene was very cute. Mateo and Rufus having their first kiss together. That was very sweet. I liked Rufus and Mateo and Lydia joining together and jumping off of that like waterfall cliff kind of thing, which I was a little bit confused how that works. I mean, was it a real cliff inside this building, or was it like the make a moment thing where it feels like a cliff but it's not? But whatever. That was also very sweet. I liked how they all came together at the club, the Plutos, Lydia, Mateo, Rufus, even Amy, who, I mean, we didn't talk about her much, but Amy kind of pissed me off. But I was happy towards the end that she kind of seemed like she kind of like wised up a little bit. um so yeah, it was all very cute. Now, I'm going to say something that's probably going to be a little controversial, but I kind of think Mateo should have died in the club. I think he should have been shot, jumping in front of a bullet for Rufus. Where it's set up pretty early on that Mateo, quote unquote, lives for everyone. Um, and will like die for people, will do anything for people. So like that would have made sense, this like heroic death. Also, it's set up for us before Mateo even meets Rufus that he has an obsession with like heroic characters, characters who take action, characters who have no fear, are brave. That would have made a lot more sense to me. The explosion felt kind of, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Not cheap, but a little rushed, I guess I'll say. It felt kind of like, okay, how do I end this book? They both have to die. An explosion, sure, why not? Um, and it kind of made his character seem a little useless. Um, did the author chicken out? Eh, perhaps. Uh, Maybe he got a little bit scared, but it's like, I mean, if I was a writer writing this story, I would rather have my character die in a heroic, meaningful way than like a simple explosion. I don't know. That's kind of lame to me. So yeah, I think he should have died then. And then of course Rufus could have died how he died. Sure, whatever. Um, I was also a little bit maybe confused with them choosing to sing American Pie. I'm like, what 17-year-old kid knows that song? Also, I'll say, like, when I was reading that they were singing American Pie, I realized I'd only ever heard the rock and roll version of that song. There was like this commercial that used to always play in like the early 2000s, this like Ford truck commercial, and they had like a rock and roll pop version of that song that would always play. So I only knew that version, and I was like, people are crying listening to that. But of course, I listened to the OG version and I was like, yeah, this is actually pretty sad. Sure, why not? What did you say about also taking easy way out of things? Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. Taking the easy way out, being a little bit lazy. Sorry, Adam Silvera. Thou said it, not me. um, so yeah. What else was I going to say? Also, I'll say that I saw a lot of comments from people, a lot of reviews mentioning that they were hoping that there was some kind of way at least Mateo could survive. It's already set up for us that Andrea, the one who calls him in the beginning, she gets his name wrong. And it's also told to us that both he and his father have the same name. People were hoping that Andrea called Mateo the son when she meant to call the father. And then his father would have died, not him. That would have been cute, but I think that's a little too cliche. It's heartbreaking, of course, but I do think it kind of packs more of a punch that both of our young characters do die. Um, you feel like that would have made you mad? Yeah, I feel you there. Because I kept seeing that comment in the reviews, and I was like, I really hope the author doesn't chicken out in that way, because that's kind of lame too. Um, Also, with Mateo's father, who we haven't really talked about at all, I was happy the author chose not to go the cliche route of like having his father wake up during his last end day. Oh my God, I'm finally awake. Oh my God, you're dying. No, like, thank God we didn't get that. That would have been pretty lame and cliche too. So, sorry. I feel kind of heartless saying these things, but I got to be honest. Um, yeah, yeah. Okay, now, like Sierra, you'd mentioned, I'm curious, the rest of you guys, are you interested in reading the other books in this series, or do you want to stop here? Of course, obviously, the other books are different characters, not these two characters, but do you want to keep going, or should we stop here?
I kind of, and I know my one friend that reads mostly YA gets like mad when I say things like this, but it's not just YA books, but with YA books and like certain romance books and like certain other books, what you can tell going in, I more view them as like popcorn, like watching a rom-com, kind of thing rather than like hard-hitting literature. Like I'm just there to be entertained, is kind of how I go into it. So for me, it was like I enjoyed this enough that I would probably read, the next book. And I think there's actually three. There's like a prequel at one point too. And it's like I probably would give them a shot. And if, it gets too much or it goes, because sometimes sequels tend to like fall flat, then I wouldn't read the third one. But I could see myself at some point trying the next one just to see, if nothing else, like Sierra said, if they give us a little more information on Deathcast itself, then I will definitely be in for it.
Yeah, I would be interested for sure. And but I totally agree with you is that you know, you don't want to watch like a Shawshank Redemption movie every single night before bed or something, right? Like something that's very, very like intense or hard. And so I usually split up my books the same way where I'll read like a really intense, like very thick full bearing book and then I will be like time to spice it up with maybe a cozy fantasy and just everyone's good and they're all great like legends and lattes or something like that. So I've been reading a lot of intense books because I've been on a horror kick lately. I blame um, our horror book that we read. So yeah, I would not mind reading a nice little book again and see what the author, if the author improves or not.
Okay, I don't want to sound mean. I think you guys have all come to realize I'm not the biggest YA fan. Of course, I did like this book. I'm not saying it's bad because it's YA. But I'm just not sure if I'm interested in continuing to read. I mean, obviously, it's not solely up to me. If you guys want to read, we can. I don't really care. But um, I think I'm more invested in these characters than I am the universe of Deathcast. I'm not sure if I really care about everyone else in this story, or and I know the next one, the sequel, I guess, is technically a prequel. It's about the beginning of Deathcast, how it started. I believe one of the main characters is the founder of Deathcast, and then of course our two like primary characters we're following are the first people to ever get their Deathcast phone call. So and there's actually another one, I believe, that comes out early next year. So that'll be 4 books in this series. I'm just not sure if I care enough to read further. But again, not solely up to me. If you guys want to, I'll add them to our list. And then, of course, perhaps one day when I'm feeling a little bit nice, I will bring it up for us to decide if we want to read it or not next. So, yeah. Also, I forgot to mention a really kind of ironic, annoying, funny part of the ending of the book is the person who calls Rufus to tell him he's going to die, Victor, is the one who kills him. Isn't that funny? Like you're calling someone saying, hey, you're going to die today, kid. I'm so sorry to hear it. Sorry to lose you, but I'm actually going to be the one who kills you. Yeah. Did anybody else notice that, or are you guys just like realizing that now?
I thought that's who it was, but then I was like gaslighting myself and being like, no, I'm remembering that wrong. That's a little too ironic. But yeah, you're right.
Okay, well, before we move on to discuss our options for our next month's read, does anyone else have any last minute burning questions, comments, characters we didn't go over, plot lines we might have missed, anything before we move on? Going once, going twice. Okay. Well, Grace, like I said, you did read my mind when it comes to what we're reading next. I I'll say I'm someone who does love a tragedy. I mean, I love sad music, I love sad movies, I love sad books, but I understand that isn't everyone's jam. And of course, I don't want to depress you guys. So I was hoping for next month we could jump into more fun fantasy novels. I had picked 2. You would love thriller. Hmm. We could do that. It's just off the top of my head. I mean, our book list is like 500 plus books long. I don't think I can pick out which one is a thriller. Okay, you're just saying, okay. I'll keep that in mind next month. But yeah, I do have some fun fantasies. I believe they're lighthearted. One is a little bit heavier than the other, but they're both fairly lighthearted and cutesy and cozy. So give me just a second and I will put the links to each book's description in the chat. The first one is going to be a book called The Fall That Saves Us, The Fall That Saved Us, by Tamara Jarret. Just a second. There is that one. I will say, Grace, like you mentioned, for lovers, Feast While You Can. This book, I don't believe is spicy, but I have been told it's like a more sensual romance, lesbian romance. So if you liked Feast While You Can, you might also enjoy this one. And the second one is called Sister Snake by Amanda Lee Coe. Just a second, and I'm gonna pop that one in the chat as well. Heads up, The Fall That Saved Us is the one that is a little heavier, but still lighthearted and cozy. Sister Snake, I believe, is more comedic. So if you want no kind of drama, Sister Snake is probably for you. Also, I will say, one of these books, I won't tell you which one, I have already purchased. So I am hoping we do pick that one because it's easy for me to get. It's literally like 10 feet away from me. So I hope you guys pick that one. But again, read those descriptions. Let me know what you guys think. And then, of course, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. God damn. I'm so sorry. My cat must have pressed the mic mute button. I think after a certain time, he gets tired of hearing me talk and he wants me to shut up.
That's what they're good
But
for.
right. And he's also like laying right here because he wants my attention. I don't know what you guys did not hear, but essentially I was saying that I'll put us down for Sister Snake the last Sunday of December, December 28th at 12 p.m. I was asking, is that okay with folks or not? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Could you repeat? You said the time and the date again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. December 28th at 12 p.m. PST. So usual time, last Sunday of the month.
Okay. Okay, I'm good with that.
We good? Okay. Cool, cool, cool. I can't remember what else I said. I don't know if you guys heard everything I was saying or not. I think I was saying I missed you guys. It's been a long time since we've met up. And I look forward to seeing you guys next month. And my usual spiel, I hope I can see you guys next month, but if I don't, and until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and of course, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I know Arian's not here, and I don't think anyone else is that far ahead, so it shouldn't be Monday for anyone, but if it is, enjoy your Monday. Okay, well,
Awesome.
bye guys.
Thank you. Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Oh, and Merry Christmas, I guess, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you too.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays. In sync.
Yes,
Yeah.
guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.